morning, everybody. Today is the 26th day in the month of April 2022. My name is Heritage. This is markets analyst at Hot Forex. And quickly, as usual, we'll check through the markets, find out what the overall sentiment is in the market, what are the big stories driving the prices, if they provide opportunities, and then how we can take advantage of it. But please remember that this is just a communication material. Nothing in this communication contains or should be considered as investment advice or investment recommendation. Users acknowledge that investment in FX and CFD products is characterized by a certain degree of uncertainty, and that any investment of this nature involves a high level of risk for which users are solely responsible. And like what we have this morning, in terms of the overall market environment is a more, a, a recovery in overall sentiment, a rebound in overall sentiment, an improvement in overall sentiment. Yesterday, we started the week on a risk-off footing where we had commodity prices down, we had high beta currencies down, AUD down, NZD down. You had strength in the likes of the US, the JPY, and the CHF. And today, we've seen a little bit of retracement, from that downside that we had yesterday. It started from yesterday's American session where there's been talk that was spurred by, an acceptance of Elon Musk's Twitter bid, right? And this set to be completed later during the year with a unanimous vote from the board. Now, yes, that helped to the up, and then there's talk that is spilled over to the rest of the market, and is why we are having that overall sentiment. But overall, the catalyst, that particular catalyst is not really strong enough to latch onto for the kind of moves we're seeing so far. I'm more on the side of it being more profit taking, being more, technical bounce, more, pullbacks, right, from, the downside that we've seen so far. But having said that, we had this written down earlier. I said, is this a turnaround Tuesday, right? Haven't had, downside yesterday and seen a little bit of upside today. Equity markets found the floor in yesterday's session, pairing some of the recent losses and sustained that upside in today's session. Commodities are also higher, to start the day as sentiment improves. But not to get too carried away, the reasons for the downside that we've seen recently, global economic slowdown, lockdowns in China because of rising virus cases, which clearly disrupt supply chains around the world. There's that has seen some negatives. That's been one of the reasons for negatives that we've seen so far. And then the Federal Reserve still looking to tighten very, very fast, right? There's even talks of about 75 basis point hike, even though that's not the base case. But that tells you the kind of hawkishness that has already been priced into, the markets generally, and that clearly is good for the dollar, but bad for equities. And all of these factors have not really, really changed. So clearly, this could still be this could simply be a pullback. Having said that, commodity currencies have rotated back to the top of the majors, following improved market sentiment, right, and higher commodity prices. You have AUD in the majors, you have NZD and CAD strong, while on the other side, you have the dollar weak, you have CHF pressured, the pounds pressured. One of our, currencies for the week in terms of the bias, we'll talk about that in a bit now. JPY also pressured as well in today's session. Amidst a light economic calendar, the major themes remain in play, the bond market, the dollar strength, as well as even overall risk sentiment. And it's possible that we even continue to see some push and pull, in sentiment, because you look at this week is month end. We have a month end at the end of this week. Apart from that, we're also expecting the Federal Reserve meeting, right, coming into next week, which obviously is one to pay attention to, and could really be a reason why market participants just wants to take a little bit of slow down or be reluctant about taking bigger positions before the meeting. Having said that, equities keep gains from yesterday, spurred by the upside in Twitter, yes, following Elon Musk's takeover bid set to be completed. But you look at the US future side of things, they're really, really still flat for today's session. So that gives you a picture of the kind of environment that we have so far. It doesn't really, yes, upside, yes, all of that, but in terms of continuation, in terms of convictions, in terms of push momentum to the upside is really, really lacking right now. And then as a trader, you want to really, really be careful with such market environments. Our prices push higher as well, following the improved sentiment. But don't forget that lockdowns in China remains, a headwind, remains a downside pressure for energy prices. The VIX holds on to losses from yesterday, but so far in today's session, really mostly flat. And then you look at the treasury side, the bond market side, lower means improved sentiment. I said this, I said the improvements in sentiment has seen commodity currencies gain against the safe havens, right? But it looks more like a pullback and technical bounce rather than a shift in the entire market sentiment, as there has really not been any tangible catalyst for the moves that we've seen so far. So you want to keep that in mind in today's trading session, as environments like this are very, very prone to shifts in shifts in sentiment generally. And then in the day ahead, really, really a light calendar scheduled for us. Looking at the equity space, for example, this is what I'm talking about. Yesterday we had a bounce, after the continuation to the downside that we had coming from Thursday last week. We had that bounce. Look at the moves that we've had so far. I mean, this really, calls for some level of pullback. So I'm more, on the downside of this rather than even looking for the upside on this. But having said that, you look at the downside and this is a pullback. If you want to just look at a Fibonacci retracement level like this from the highs up to this level, right? I mean, you know, this is just very close to the 38.2 retracement level as well. So I mean, that wouldn't really, you know, it wouldn't really be out of place if we say that's a level where you can expect pullback towards. Look at previously, we've had levels around support levels here, resistance levels here. A lot of times, rejections clearly at this key round number 4300, and now we are there. And in today's session, we are struggling to really see momentum to break back above, that level. So clearly, I'm not looking to jump in to buy this. If I was going to pick one, I'd rather be on the sell side of this, really, rather than looking to buy. But because the sentiment is still at least tilting more positive, I wouldn't want to do anything with this so far. Net change just about 0.12% so far. So clearly nothing much on that particular front. And it's a similar story across most of the equity space. Similar story there. The bond markets keeps being, you know, for example, this year we had that pressure in our mid-recovery sentiment. But now you're seeing it picking up some more. So clearly that even helps you understand that the sentiment we're having so far is not one that you want to latch onto so much. The VIX also trading flat. Oil prices have also kept that bounce into this session. But like I said, recently we've seen further pullbacks downside so far. So clearly that also tells you the kind of environment that we have trading in the session so far. Having said that, you want to look out for the currency space, right? First of all, we talked about strengths and weaknesses with AUD leading the majors, NZD being strong, CAD being strong as well. While on the other hand, you want to look out for weakness in the likes of dollar, weakness in Japanese yen, Swiss franc. The pounds also showing some weakness, but you want to look at something like AUD versus USD. Now, the upside in situation, yes, is seen, is evident, it's clear. Somebody might want to look at this and say, we've broken above this key round number, 0.72, we're retesting it, previous highs going back to yesterday, in line with the current sentiment, we could look out for the upside from here. But in terms of convictions for this opportunity, and then, confidence is really, really low, considering the fact that the catalyst for the upside we're seeing right now is not really solid, right? So having said that, I'm not looking to jump into this, but if you wanted to, you could, but I would be more of a fan of looking for, a retest of this, looking for further downside. If sentiment tilts back to the negative side, I'll prefer that. But in terms of looking for upside from here, it's really, really tricky. And it's just something I'm looking to go into right now. Sentiment right now supports it. I'm just saying that conviction is not really on my side on that particular one. AUD as well, also similar story, broke above, yesterday's European high. We could look to retest this, and then you could say, based on the current sentiment, you want to look out for further upside from here. It's not a bad idea at all. I'm just saying, in terms of convictions, it's just a little bit tricky, for me on that particular front. AUDJPY, another similar story there. We broke above today's Asia high, right? And then even yesterday's, this previous highs, or this key level of support and resistance around 92.0. Now we're retesting it. We could look out for further upside on this. After it's above the 50 moving average on this particular chart, and as well as the 100 moving average. We could look out for further upside in today's session, right? But in terms of conviction, I'm just a little bit, very patient with this. What I really like to see, I'm more of a fan of further downside on this particular pair currently based on the sentiment that we have, based on the overall, themes in the markets. So what I like to see really, any rotation back towards this level would be better for me, if only we can get sentiment tilt to the more, to the more negative side, then I would prefer, for the downside from this particular level here. Now, we talked about pounds USD on the morning show yesterday on Top Radio 90.9. And then I remember saying that I still am a big fan of this to the downside. Yes, in today's session, we've not really had so much, but in the week, I like to really see, a rotation back towards 1.28 or 1.285, looking for downside on this pair. And the reasons have been stated earlier, right? Although you look at how stretched it's been, I mean, nothing says we cannot really get deeper pullbacks, but I'm really a fan of further downside on the pounds right now, and strength for the USD heading into the Federal Reserve meeting next week. And then even for the UK and the BOE is still tilting less hawkish like compared to how they were, before. So having said that, on the calendar today, it's a light one. We don't really have so much going on the calendar. Yes, we could talk about durable goods orders, but not really looking. This cannot really change, the Fed's stance so far. So clearly, apart from this, there's really not much on the calendar. Really light one. The major themes remain. Major themes like the dollar strength in line with hawkish Federal Reserve, global slowdown on the back of lockdowns in China, tensions in Russia, Ukraine still remains. Right, there's really been not so much progress, particularly there. It remains there as well, and the bond market as well in terms of further high upside for yields. All of those themes remain in place. But before we heading into month end, heading into the Federal Reserve meeting next week, it's very likely, it's possible that we continue to see push and pull in the overall market sentiment before we get that. So that's it for now. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. I would always do our best to help. Thank you. Do enjoy the rest of the trading session. Bye for now.